this is this week's episode of Antiques. This is Antique Book. It is called The History of the 19th Century Year by Year by Edwin Emerson Jr. So it's basically a book about the 1800s. And it was written, copyrighted in 1900. For the most part, it's 120 years old. The outside has got some rough spots on it. Cover has not really been well maintained. But, the book inside, it's definitely a readable book. You can be very careful with the front parts, but it's still in pretty decent condition for a book that's 120 years old. And it's just got all the eras of the 1800s, the Napoleonic era, the middle period, and the modern age. And it gives an introduction. There's some full color pages. And I would say the introduction is probably the most interesting part. It gives, of course, his personal opinions and ideas about the beliefs of why the Puritans started their journey into creating this new nation and what they were really fighting for. And actually interesting, it mentions prophecies. It has some poetry in it. So here's I'm just going to read this little excerpt here. The history of the European states during the Christian era forms inseparable and whole as that of the Greek peninsula and its colonies in antiquity. In both eras, the same forms of law and order are revealed in their course of inner development. These laws are the same, which repeat themselves at large in the history of the entire human race. They're talking about from the beginning of times, the same cycles of oppressions repeat themselves within various races. From the despotism of the Orient to the aristocratic states of antiquity in the Middle Ages, founded on slavery and serfdom, and from the policy of the Western states still in development, there is a regular progress of intellectual and civil freedom, first from one to that of the few and from them to all. Talks about it separating from England for the purposes of freedom. No modern state has passed through such a normal history as England. The different phases of state development have nowhere else been so clearly defined. The old Teutonic constitution under the patriarchal monarchy appears nowhere so fully developed as with the Anglo-Saxons, and no race has left such treasures of law books and literature in its first period of state formation. The feudal system was nowhere so finished and perfect from its beginning, nor so strong and lasting for such a period of time as in Normannic England. So it tells you right there where his ideologies are, is with pretty much kind of against the separation. But nonetheless, it's a book that shares a lot of history of the century. So with his introduction anyways, talks about the classes of people in particular, privileges, on and on and on this gone from the beginning of time. But it talks about a lot about the views of the church as well. So the introduction, I would think people would want to read at the very least this introduction. Like the immigrants had the close and exclusive spirit of Teutonic reserve, which forbade them to form connections with the Indians, whom they regarded as being incapable of accepting humanity. Yeah, okay. Anyways. But it's interesting, though, that history and attitudes and problems of the same problems in history is cyclic. It repeats itself, and it's a constant battle to battle against the same behaviors that cause these same problems, and it's like never ending. Whatever freedoms and privileges and battles against oppressions that have been progressed, there's always the battle to take it backwards. Always. Anyways, so this book has you know, some, it shows you, looky there, look at that. Look at that. This is from 1900. This book is from 1900. Look how big the United States was. Look how big Mexico was. Look at that. Louisiana was like its own. What? I believe Oklahoma became a state in the first, I think it was like 1900 or 1902. There were still a lot of states that became states in the 1800s and 1900s as well. So a lot of the United States is older than the rest of the United States. It took a long time to collect all the states. But at any rate, it's an interesting book. I would say if anybody would like to read this book, just let me know. Queen Louise. The pictures are well maintained as well. This is let's see, the Friedland 1807. All the different battles. It's a pretty good color picture that's preserved. And so all of the book is pretty well maintained. The center, it's not separating or anything. But the entire, I mean, to write a book about the entire century and to preserve what happened in each year of an entire century makes for an interesting historical find, in my opinion. This is the retreat from Moscow. It's got some actual quotes from Napoleon as well in here. I'm not going to read them, but he was lamenting about losing France and talking about people losing him France. Oh, you lost me Spain, and now you lost me France. You're losing me France too. Worried about his family during the battle. Congress of Vienna, Treaty of Paris. But anyways, this book from 1900... an entire history of the 1800s, the 19th century, year by year. Not in the best condition on the outside, but nonetheless a pretty good keepsake. So if you're interested in this book, would like to know more about it, or actually would like to read this book, let me know. Comment below what you think about this particular antique Bluebird Antique Books. Y'all have a good one.